Just to note that we uploaded to Centralina's YouTube channel after the meeting. For those in attendance, these microphones in the room are very sensitive, so they'll hear every crinkle of paper, they'll hear ice, so please be careful, stuff like that. You'll hear the noise in the background or whatever's in front of you, so please be very aware of that. On a procedural note, in August, the governor lifted the statewide state of emergency order. With this action, the special provisions established for conducting remote meetings during the pandemic are no longer applicable. For us, that means we are no longer required to conduct votes by a roll call. Instead, we will resume the normal voting method of voicing ayes or nays after a motion. However, because we have members attending both in person and remotely, I'd like the clerk to call the roll at the beginning of the meeting so everyone is aware of who's present. Names will be called in alphabetical order by last name. I'll now ask the clerk to call the roll.
Dante Anderson, Peter Asciuto, Brittany Barnhart, Bobby Compton,
Yes.
Kathy Davis, Martha Sue Hall,
Present.
Daryl Kennett, Jean Hout, Bob Hovis, Corinthia Lewis Lemon,
Here.
Pedro Mori, Lynn Shu, Jennifer Stepp, Amelia Stinson Wesley, David Williams, Jarvis Woodburn.
Here.
Commissioner Shu, I think just connected the audio, Kelly.
So we do not have one at the moment, so we have heard in the future it's better playing with you.
How many will it take, Kelly, to have a quorum?
We would need 10,
So how many more does that mean?
maybe another 5 or 6, yeah.
Okay, at this time, we did not have a quorum, so as we proceed, we'll be receiving this for information only until quorum is established. But for now, let's go have a moment of silence, please. And I'm doing this in remembrance of all our veterans. It's being Veterans Day week. There's Veterans Day at the end of the week and a lot going on. Some are heavy in our hearts over time. So we all know someone's a veteran. So please, a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And again, veterans.
Hello.
Just anywhere?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Indianapolis, well represented.
Well represented now.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We have arrived.
Gentlemen, all I've done so far is just the call to order, roll call comments thus far. So we'll get the agenda to you.
Sorry that we're
Geraldine will get
this late.
information. Yes, okay.
Nothing like driving into the sun a while ago.
That's right.
Wait a minute.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've gone through the moment of silence, so thank you, gentlemen. Okay, again, we do not have a quorum as of yet, so we'll just be continuing the meeting and if you receive this information this morning. Thank you. Just some comments on some, yes, sir, Mayor.
For all of you all who don't know, this is Tom Kincaid. Tom is the alternate to the executive committee, so we're glad he could come and speak with us tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, I know Tom.
No, a couple of you. Good to
Yeah.
see y'all again.
You've been on the board over there for quite some time, so appreciate
Oh, wow.
your service in Kannapolis and everything you've done over there. I think you're doing over there. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank
It's
you.
Great for our region.
Appreciate that. It's been busy.
Yes, you have. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Regarding comments on the agenda, on consent agenda, it's just the minutes from the September Executive Board, and there's no amendments to the agenda. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Point of order.
Yes.
Can't do that motion if we don't have a
Oh,
quorum.
that's right.
Sorry about
I
that.
just said that.
I know, but you know, it's being
Yeah,
that
it's going by
parliamentary
my notes.
procedure. Being that parliamentary procedure.
Thank you, Martha Sue. Thank you.
And I just saw that Peter Shudo is coming on in just momentarily. So if that helps. Yeah.
All right. From there, we're going to move on to our regular business item, and we'll hear from FY22 audit report. Mr. Dan Gordy is with us this evening. Mr. Gordy, welcome.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Gordy.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. This is actually the first time I'm able to be here in the new offices. We came during our interim time when you were still in the old offices, so it's great to see this new space. It looks great. We'll be able to walk around and see everything, and it's very bright in here and very nice to work in. So what I have for you today is our executive summary on the audit report. I'm the director on the audit myself. I'm signing the opinion. And I've audited the financial statements of Centralina this year. And I've also worked on this engagement for the last about 5 years or so. So Kelly, if you could just go. And then Brian White had been the manager. He had been the staff and senior on this job and moved up into the manager position. So he's also someone who's been continuity with the Centralina audit in the last couple of years. And then Rose was a new senior on the engagement. Next slide. And you can skip right over this. So this is just everything we're going to go over tonight, but really just want to start off by going over the results overall. We audit the financial statements of Centralina in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And we also audit the financial statements in accordance with government auditing standards, also known as a yellow book audit. We also are issuing a report on compliance on direct and material compliance requirements with your major federal and state programs that you administer here. And we have issued an unmodified, which is also known as a clean, the highest level opinion we can give under our auditing standards, under our audit of the financial statements and the audit of the federal and state dollars that you oversee. Go to the next slide. This is just a slide to just speak to, and actually let me go back here for 1 second. This whole presentation is been made to replace what we previously had provided to you all in what was known as a SAS 114 letter. So you might have remember a 1-2 page letter that we would give it to you. That's all in the slides here now, so that we are just presenting to you in this presentation. I don't mean to read off every word of every slide here, but I do warn you that some of the slides are a little bit more wordy because we're trying to fit a letter into a presentation. But this internal communication just says our responsibilities to identify if we identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls, that we would provide that information to you and let you know what those issues were. If you go to the next slide, this one defines what a material weakness and a significant deficiency is, in which a material weakness is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies that a misstatement would not be prevented, detected timely. And then a significant deficiency is one that's less than a material weakness, but still important enough that we would communicate to you in charge of governance. And I'm happy to say we did not note any deficiencies that we consider to be a material weakness. And I just pause there to just say, we can't say in our slides or say out that we had no significant deficiencies under our standards. But we can say we had no material weaknesses, but I will say we had no significant that we.
So question, may I have a question?
Yep.
So repeat that one more time. You cannot put in writing, is that what I heard on the slide?
Correct.
Okay, I just think people need to hear that, okay?
Yeah.
Or something I'm gonna ask in just a few minutes, nothing derogatory, but just ask
Sure.
the devil. Thank you, go ahead.
And if you go to the next slide. So then we're getting into our requirements to talk about if we had any corrected or uncorrected misstatements. So this is something that during the course of our audit, did we find something in the financial statements that needed to be corrected? And was that either corrected or was that passed on and not being corrected because it wasn't considered material? Happy to say we had none that were corrected or uncorrected, which basically means the financial statements, trial balance that was provided to us at the beginning of the audit is what you see in your financial statements here today. So what management had presented to us is what you see, and there was no adjustments as a result of our audit. Next slide. The significant accounting policies can be found in note 1 of the financial statements. And there was one new GASB that was implemented this year, and this was the GASB 87 that relates to the lease standard. So this was this standard is being implemented by all governments across the United States right now. And it creates to put on the balance sheet all leases, whether they are operating or capital in nature, on the balance sheet as a right to use asset and a lease liability when you are the lessee. It also, for governments only, requires that if you're a lessor, you would record a receivable and deferred inflow for those payments that you're going to receive over the life of a lease, where you are actually leasing out property to someone else. For Centralina, you had none in which you're a lessor that would need to be recorded. But you did have a couple that were lessee, obviously the largest and biggest part of that being this office space here. So under previous GAAP, this office space would not be recorded, it would be a disclosure. Now it is recorded on your balance sheet. So it's reflected as a right to use asset. And all in all, between your copiers and this lease property, it was about $2.3 million that came on the books this year due to the lease standard. I'll pause there for a second because that is a change in accounting principles. If anyone has a question about anything with that.
Any questions so far, Mr. Gordon?
We'll go to the next slide. We're also under our our standards were updated this year, known as SAS 134 and 135. That required the audit report to be a little bit different from previous years. So there's a little bit more wording. It's a little bit longer of a report. It says basically the same that we said before, it just gives a little bit more context to what an audit is and what an audit is not. It also has a specific reference in there to going concern. Used to only put going concern if you actually had a going concern. Now it just puts in there that if management is responsible for assessing if there was to be a going concern. Also, the opinion has been moved up all the way to the top of the letter now. So in the past, you might have to search through the letter, get to the bottom and see the opinion. You can see right at the top, did you have a clean opinion or did you not have a clean opinion? From an audit perspective, from an auditor's perspective, it's not always so good to be up the top because you want to kind of lead into that reading and make sure everyone's reading everything else. But hopefully you will read the rest of that letter after you get through the opinion. Another change was that we had to specifically disclose about related parties. If we found any related parties that were not previously disclosed to us by management, there were none. All related parties that you have were properly disclosed, and we found no transactions that needed to be disclosed that weren't already. Next slide. Another change here is significant unusual transactions. If you had any significant or unusual transactions, we would disclose to you and speak to you about those transactions. And they define those as outside the normal course of business or otherwise unusual due to the timing, nature, or size of the adjustment. Don't really consider, GASB 87 is a new lease standard, but that's just a standard that everyone knows we're implementing in the next year. That's not really considered significant unusual. It'd be really outside the course of your business processes and changes in processes. But nothing to note there. Next slide. From an accounting estimate standpoint, a lot of these have gone unchanged from last year. We just have one new one. But we have the allowance for doubtful accounts for your receivables. We have depreciation expense for your assets. We have the actuarial assumptions related to the local government employee retirement system pension liability, and then also to the other post-employment benefits liability that you have as well. And then the interest rate for the leases and just leases in general, your right to use asset and lease liability is based on the terms of the agreement and management's assessment about being reasonably certain to go past maybe the initial term into an extended term. It also is related to your interest rate liability because with calculating liability, you have to present value that liability at the beginning of the lease, and that's based on the current interest rate that you would have for other debt borrowings. And because Centralina doesn't have any other debt borrowings, they reached out to a banker to understand what would be the rate that would be charged to Centralina if we were to go out to debt to fund this operation versus just paying a lessor. And we looked at historical trends. We looked at the estimated useful life of the assets. We looked at the actuarial valuation assumptions, including the discount rate and mortality tables that were used. And we found no issues with any of the assumptions management used in their estimates. Next. This one is just saying that the financial statements are neutral, consistent, and clear. There's nothing in there in the financial statements that is excessive or not needed. Everything is in there that is required under our standards. Go to the next slide. For non-attest services, a lot of agencies have us help in preparing financial statements. I'm happy to say that Denise and Centralina does their own financial statements. They prepare their own financial statements and provide it to us. That's a really good thing to be able to have, because that really keeps our independence kosher and kind of down the middle and divided. While we can remain independent, even if we were to prepare it, it's a great asset to have here in Centralina, to have someone who can prepare governmental financial statements and present it to the auditor for us to then audit. And then the last thing here is the data collection form. We are required to go into the data collection form and start the process and fill out the information, but management goes in, reviews, and certifies it before we submit it. And the data collection form is what we submit to the federal government on what federal awards Centralina has each year and which ones were audited and what our opinion was on each of those awards that we audited. And from an independence standpoint, obviously independence being the cornerstone of our profession, we are independent of Centralina and we remained independent throughout the whole audit process. Next slide. Now, the next two slides are just a lot of, again, those pre-printed things that we need to affirm with you all in person. And that's, we had no difficulties encountered in our audit. We had no disagreements with management. There was no auditor consultations. During the course of an audit, we may consult with someone within our firm on a matter. If we were to have consulted with someone, then we would have to disclose that to you all at the end of the audit. We did not have any of those during this audit period. And received a management representation letter that was signed by management back on October 31st, which is the date that we have issued financial statements. Excellent. Again, no management consultations, no shopping for an opinion, no going around trying to figure out a different way to account for something that we maybe didn't agree with or didn't see that same way. No other findings or issues, no fraud or illegal acts came to our attention throughout the audit. And there was no going concern that needed to be evaluated for Centralina. For required supplementary information, this is the information that directly follows the notes to the financial statements. This is mostly related to your pensions and OPEB ratios. It tells you about your covered payroll of your payroll that are covered by these pension and OPEB benefits, and tells you about the liability of that and the contributions to that. We don't audit that information. That information is not audited by us, but we do look at it for consistency and make sure that it's consistent with the information that we do audit within the financial statements. And then we have the supplementary information, which is these are those individual fund schedules and budgetary schedules in the back. We're looking again at those. We are giving an in relation to opinion there, which means in relation to the financial statements, they're consistent, clear, and there's nothing that disagrees with what we've audited. Next slide. Next four are GASBs that are coming out in the next couple of years that could affect you all. I can tell you right now, GASB 94, which is a public-private and public-public partnerships. Best way for me to kind of explain this is sometimes, and this wouldn't be in a situation here, but like a toll road. The state has a toll road. They ask the government to help participate in running that toll road. That could be a public-private public partnership. There could be also public-private partnerships to maybe run a convention center. And if someone's doing the concessionaires and the running and the operating of that thing. You don't have anything that we believe that would meet any of this, but just the nature of your organization, you may down the road. run into something where you are partnering with a public organization or a private organization that could fall into the standard. So I just want to make you aware that that is out there as a new standard, and that is effective next year. Also effective next year is GASB 96, which is kind of the sister or brother to 87 for the leases, which is now they want to also put on the book any subscription-based technology that you may have leased over a period of time. I'm talking preliminary with Denise, I think you guys have a lot of annual year-to-year contracts, which those would be considered short-term and not be recorded. But if you did have any long-term 5-6 year agreements for subscriptions, those could be reported on the balance sheet again as a right to use asset and liability. But I think they call it intangible in that case. Go one back one more. So GASB 100, nothing really too big there. It's just defining how an accounting change, whether it really is an error or if it's just a change in accounting, and just better, nothing's really changing in terms of how we do anything or how we define it. Just GASB was trying to better define it than they didn't have a standard before that really did a good job of that. And then the last one, 101, which is compensated absences, is your payment for sick leave and vacation accruals. Not a lot's going to change there. This is actually not effective until 2025. So we've got a couple of years before we even have to implement this. But I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change there. The biggest change that governments may see is sick leave accrual. If you don't have to pay out sick leave accrual, but you do pay out sick leave accrual, historically, then you should be accruing for that. You do pay out some sick leave accrual and you actually have an accrual for that. So you're actually already in line with the new standard. But there are some other states and counties and cities out there that have not historically not accrued for sick leave, only accrued for vacation, but they have paid it out. And so they just want everyone to put everything on the books that is going to be considered payable.
And that's in 2025?
Yeah. And GASB has a number of projects going on right now. Revenue recognition is a big one right now. The big thing there is that they want everything under a systematic and rational approach of pretty much recognizing revenue over the life of a contract. So basically everything is, unless it's for today and only for today, you're going to put a deferred inflow on the books and recognize that inflow over time if it's a contract that exceeds multiple years. Not a lot's changing with that, but there's still a lot of talks about what they want the fund financial statements versus the government want financial statements to look, but changes will be coming in the next 5-6 years. Okay, next slide. Next two slides are just your revenues that I like to just show from a graphical format here. Really in line with last year, a little bit of an increase. A lot of that has to do with continued CARES and ARPA, additional appropriations from the aging side of things. You have your technical assistant contracts are down a little bit. You had a really good year last year with a lot of projects out there related to, I think there was the big transportation project in the prior year. And then otherwise, pretty much standard year over year, but obviously intergovernmental revenues being the bulk of your revenues. And go to the next slide. And then that kind of goes in line with the human services being the aging program, being the largest granting program that you have. In general government, actually, let me also just point out there, it went up, but it was because we were implementing this lease standard, which at the fund level required us to record an expenditure and a revenue for the same exact amount. So in that general government is the $2 million that we put on the books for the lease. So that goes in as a capital outlay, even though you really didn't pay money out. You didn't pay the $2 million today. And then a lease liability issued revenue, which offsets each other, zero effect. Go to the next slide. Another thing, last year, if you remember, we talked about some performance indicators. The local government commission gave some performance indicators that every government has to abide by. And if you have anything that's a negative ratio or negative trend, that they ask that you then respond to them and talk to them about that and tell them what you're doing to improve over the years. For Centralina, the uniqueness of your entity, you don't have as many as maybe a city or a county may have. in terms of performance indicators. But your one is that the minimum threshold has to be greater than 0, and which you have $1.3 million in terms of your fund balance in the general fund. So you're not considered to have an issue there. And then from an audit report that you are expected to issue within 5 months, which you've already submitted to the local government commission before the 5-month period ended, which is November 30th. You had no statutory violations, no violations of your general statute 159, budgeting, cash collections, cash management, no violations to report. In our audit, you had no debt service, so there was no debt service or debt covenants, and there were no material or significant deficiencies that we reported on. So there's nothing for you. So because of all this, there's nothing for you that you have to report to the local government commission. You were clear of all their performance indicators. Okay, the next. So with that, I just want to recognize Denise and Geraldine as well for all the help in terms of getting this audit completed. And everyone within the staff out there for Centralina, we deal with a lot of different departments there. We deal with aging quite a lot. We deal with workforce every once in a while when we test the workforce funding. And so I just want to thank everyone for their efforts and providing us the information we needed to complete the audit.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Gordy or Denise? Martha Sue?
Sorry. Thank you. So attaboy, attagirl to begin with. Three follow-ups. And a lot of this is, I know we have to look at where we've been to see where we're headed and that kind of thing. And I have no conception of time, but I think this is pre-COVID, the comment that I'm about to make. So Geraldine, I don't know if it's pre-Geraldine or not. Okay, I just don't know. Attaboy that we've got 1.3 million in the fund balance. Attaboy. There was a time back there, and I can't remember if y'all were here then. I don't even know, Denise, if you were here, okay?
No, it was before me.
Okay.
I know where you're going.
Okay, but and I want to bring it out because I think it's lessons learned and good where we are moving forward. We didn't have 1.3 million in the fund balance. We were scratching to make ends meet. And the executive board, and I believe in the board of delegates echoed that we would keep, what our minimum, what we were hoping to have as a minimum. And I don't think it was a percentage as much as it was an amount. Am I making this up? Okay, good. I just, and I guess, and it was not, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, not a million. Okay. So attaboy, because I know that the LGC has strike that. Yeah, the LGC and the state treasurer have already moved the threshold for local governments. Used to be if you got to a certain percentage, you got the bad letter. Well, now that percentage is going to be, jacked up about, I think, 5 to 8%. So without going back to look, what is our 1.3? What is that percentage wise?
13.
13. Okay.
It did go down a little bit from last year, and that's mostly because of cost we incurred with the move.
Oh, yeah, it was $2 million there. And you see where I was going, because I think what we've got to look at is we're better than we were, but we're probably not quite there where we need to be. Yeah, but I'm just throwing that out there, number one. And the other thing, just to throw on the table, the second comment would be, what is best practice? And it's not fair to ask you this, okay? Not Cherry Beck and Hall, it's not fair. But what is best practice, or what is our, as an executive board's goal about how long we allow a certain firm to work and a certain head or whatever, lead, if you will, on it. We're all parts of nonprofits out there that won't allow that to happen very long, because everybody just sort of gets feels good with what's going on. So I just throw that out as a comment, but ask that question, and to my colleagues on here, my fellow electeds, as well as to you all that are the staff. So I'll shut up now, my concerns.
So Terry Beckert was hired prior to my coming.
That's what I thought.
And the year that Marcia Sutton had left and I came in as finance director was to start a new contract period. And because I was new to this organization and to government accounting, we requested that the board approve us to stay where we were, since I had at least done 1 year of audit with them, instead of changing everything up. So this puts us at the end of our 3rd year of doing that, I believe.
Okay, very good.
So we'll do a
So-
procurement. Yes.
Very good.
And on the fund balance issue,
Yeah.
we had a board conversation in 2020. It was the spring of 2020.
COVID, right?
I think it was like the meeting or one of the first meetings under that.
Okay.
If my slide deck is March 17th, 2020. So
Oh,
it's literally.
The
like
Wednesday
right-
after things shut down.
Pretty much. So just as a point of comparison, in 2015, our fund balance percentage was 2%.
Right, here we
That
go.
was the leanest year. 2013, it was 14%, but it was only $900,000. So it's always going to be moving a little bit. But we have kind of grown from 2%. We built it back up to 10% in 2020. So we're on our
Way up.
way up.
And I just want folks to remember where we've been, particularly if we have new people, out there. Thanks.
And when the board discussed it, what target did they ask for us to try to achieve?
I think we were, at the time, we were talking about 15% and that filed too quickly, hold on. We were talking about 15% at the time, which in 2020, when we had the discussion, was 945,000. But it was a moving target, obviously, because we got the bump in revenues because of the American Rescue Plan Act. So
So our current target is 15.
I don't think the board has actually ever set a target for us. We've always just been at whatever the LGC has, which I guess is a pretty low bar of 0.
Well, so, yeah, and what you had mentioned, cities and counties are being asked to meet at least like 25% in most cases. And that's been something, I think there was consternation amongst the municipalities all that they thought there was something out there that said 9% was the bar. And the LGC said, no, there was something on the PowerPoint one time where it said 9%, but that never was the bar. And so they finally came out and said, we want 25%. And that was higher than most people were doing. I would say there's a lot of big cities and counties out there that don't have anywhere near that. I mean, some of them around 14, 15, 16%. But I think what the LGC also realized is that you guys are unique and different than them. So they didn't hold you to that same bar, but it doesn't mean internally you can't be looking at trying to increase that and try to make your own. Because yes, I mean, the bar for them they've set for you is basically 0. If you had 0 fund balance, they say you're fine. And I don't think you all would feel fine in that case, but.
No.
I mean, if this is something the board would like to revisit, we can put this on the agenda for discussion in the spring.
Maybe something worth discussing when we do have enough people here to discuss it and see where we are, where we've been, where we are, and where we need to be.
But we're great right now compared to we were. I mean, I remember those days when we were like,
Absolutely. I mean,
scraping.
Martha, she's been here a long time and I came sometime after and I can remember we had good financial reports back then, but the numbers weren't anything like they are now. So we're in much better shape as time has gone on and with our leadership and finance director and staff. So thanks to those here.
But I think Mayor Hennig picked up on what I was leading to is that I just remember, but I never knew if we came up or decided an amount that we really wanted. We just knew we had to do something. But attaboy to
Not to
where.
my knowledge, there was anything set or defined. We just knew we need to increase it over time. Any further questions for financial folks?
I would like to say thank you to Dan for coming and doing the presentation. I appreciate your services in doing the audit again this year. And potentially working more in the future, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time, everyone. Thank you.
Mr. York, appreciate you in person.
Yep.
Yeah, just been a little while. Thank you.
Yep.
And Denise and your staff, thank you. It's good report. You have it right here. Thank you so much for what you do. We still do not have a quorum. We're still a couple short. We're to receive this as information. I'm sorry to say. Attention, please, to item number 3. Now, federal relations update. It's the first time Leslie Mazinga has been with us in person. Usually she's calling me or something.
The first time, but it's the
Well,
first in a while.
And usually when she calls in or she's remote or something, man, she can let it roll. So this is going to be quite a trip. But she's here in person. We get to look at her. She looks at us and she rolls off all that paperwork she has over there on the desk.
And if you don't mind, I won't stand up because I do need
No,
all
you're
my
fine.
paperwork in front of me.
It's nice to have you. You're on.
Well, thank you. Well, if I started by saying, would you believe me that absolutely nothing whatsoever is happening in Washington? Would you believe me?
No.
So it was a very long night. It continues to be a long day, but let me start first with your performance report. As always, I don't go through this. It's in your package. Hopefully people have had an opportunity to look through it. So I don't want to go line by line in it, but more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. The things that I will highlight is, again, working with your team, working with Geraldine in particular, working with your team, trying to look at the bipartisan infrastructure law, things that are occurring in the Inflation Reduction Act, all the money that's coming out of Washington, what can Centralina do specifically to apply and to look for regional opportunities to put those things together. So we've been, going through the different grants, talking about potential opportunities, doing webinars or attending webinars, and most of all, having regular discussions to match those items up. So again, and beginning to think, which will be coming very soon on a larger basis, but also beginning to think through and waiting for the midterms to occur. What does the federal action plan need to look like for next year? I would still encourage everyone, if you've got additional, thoughts or input that you would like to see as a priority for that federal action plan, please let Geraldine know so we can make sure we incorporate that. I'll pause briefly to see if anyone has any questions about the performance report before I jump into some quick analysis for midterms and being careful with your time, knowing to keep you on schedule.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions? I know you've got the report in your packet. We'll send out to you. Any questions regarding that?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And so obviously with the midterm elections, we've got a number of things going on. Specifically, I won't report on the big picture so much because some of that is still undecided and really don't want to get into the weeds of that. Really, in terms of this meeting, what's most important is what's happening in Centralina region and what's happening in North Carolina as a whole. So, on the Senate level, of course, most of you probably heard some of this through the news, so I apologize for a repetition, but on the Senate side, you've got Representative Ted Budd, who's now Senator-elect Ted Budd to replace Richard Burr. For Centralina purposes, the really great news about that is, Mr. Chairman, you have spent many years sitting in front of Ted Budd talking about Centralina issues. And he has been a strong supporter, a strong advocate for this region. So we get to carry that foundation that we've built with then Congressman, now Senator-elect, to the Senate side and having an advocate there. His office, for example, this year led a bipartisan effort. Every year we have to go into the Appropriations Committee and ask specifically for language that gives regional councils the same consideration as local governments whenever there's a competitive grant available that's available to local governments. The regional councils can apply just as effectively on behalf of local government, not in lieu of, but in addition to, and give them that level playing field. And Senator-elect Budd led a letter this year to go to all of our delegations to send that into all of the 7 relevant committees. So that's just one example of where he's taken a leadership role. His office has worked very closely with us. He has wonderful district staff as well as DC staff. And so that's a good example of spending time and having it pay off in terms of having someone know more about who we are and what we do. The other thing, so the North Carolina delegation as a whole in the congressional seats, we moved from, before we had 13 seats, it was 8 Republicans, 5 Democrats. We now moved to 14 seats, and we're evenly split 7-7, Republicans and Democrats. So we have some new members coming on, some from redistricting, some from, in the case of the western part of the state where a member of Congress, Madison Cawthorn, lost his primary, so we got a new member there. And then we had 2 retiring members, Mr. Price and Mr. Butterfield, who retired, and so they'll be replaced. In this area, we what's really interesting, so again, is that we have some seats that we lose. We don't have as many people represented in the Centralina region, but it's also evenly split. We now have 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats representing this area. So it reflects in this region exactly where we are at the state level, which I thought was pretty interesting. We have also some incumbents that we keep, and then we pick up a new member. So we have Representative McHenry, Representative Adams, and Representative Bishop that will stay with us. We lose in terms of representation, Representative Fox and Representative Hudson. We pick up a new member, Representative-elect Jackson. I will also say for those who, and I know you, Jay, you're probably taking meticulous notes. We do have a report that is that's up on the screen and that I'm sure Kelly will be putting in the material. So a lot of this is written out for y'all already. I'm just giving you a quick verbal update. With redistricting, especially in the area, of Gastonia, as an example, you've seen, some shifts a lot, in terms of representation and how that's going to work. So it's going to be really interesting to see us go forward in terms of these offices having some folks that know us well and have worked with us very closely, like Representative Adams, who's always been a strong supporter and done a lot for us, and then those that will have to go in and educate. Geraldine and I have been talking for some time about the process of getting in on the staff to staff level. So when new members of Congress, you have to kind of give them a chance to staff up, but going back to those existing members and again, reminding them where our priorities are going into 2023. The other thing that I'll remind you of that comes with an election is committee positions. Is a big part. That's where legislation really gets created. It's where it gets amended. Very, very seldom does a lot of amendment really occur on the House floor unless it's in block by leadership. What you see instead is all of this occurs at the committee level. So really, you really want to get things accomplished. You really have to rely on those members that serve on those committees. And North Carolina as a whole, we lose a very important position on the Appropriations Committee with the retirement of David Price. And so that's something that I'm hoping maybe when they do the committee shifts, they'll give North Carolina another seat on the Appropriations Committee. David Price was incredibly good about taking in requests from all over the state. Richard Hudson has spoken to that many times that he could go to David Price with anything, and Mr. Price would always make sure to take care of the state. So that's a loss for the state as a whole. And then, if things go in the direction that they appear to be going in the House, changes majority, then we have some members of the North Carolina delegation that will become chairs of their committees. An example of that is Representative Virginia Fox is likely to be chair of this is a little nugget for y'all. It will be the Education and Workforce Committee. It's currently the Education and Labor Committee. For years now, they switch depending on who's in charge. If Democrats are in charge, they name it the Education and Labor Committee. And if Republicans are in charge, it gets renamed the Education and Workforce Committee. So don't let them confuse. That only happens on the House side. So that'll be one change. And then in our region, in terms of Representative McHenry, he's likely to be in charge of financial services. And so he'll have a chairmanship there if things progress in the way that they're looking. To go back for a moment, though, in terms of having someone, for example, like Representative Fox that might chair a very important committee for us in the region, which is I'm going to be in charge of the overdue reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And we would expect that would likely move forward. She was the architect of the first bill and very proud of that. And I would see an opportunity to do that. Geraldine's role and particularly with the legislative committee work and things that the statewide association is doing, because we'll have to now rely on some some of the regional councils and COGs from those districts to kind of carry the torch for us, but we'll be able to weigh in. But she has a very active role in the statewide association to make sure that our region's needs are being carried forward with that group effort. So those are just, again, some very high level analysis. We were putting together as a firm, we're putting together a very detailed midterm analysis. It'll have all the serious stuff with all these numbers, and it'll have a few nuggets, some fun things like the education and labor point and some other things that we pick up along the way. The next big dates that will be, so look out for the midterm analysis. A shorter version of that in terms of what I presented on tonight will be in the next newsletter under Capitol Corner. We'll be focusing on Centralina's results in terms of elections. And then the next, I guess the next big date, aside from, a December 6th runoff in Georgia to determine Senate, but the next big date after that would be December 16th, when the continuing resolution that we're currently under that funds the government, that will expire December 16th, and they have to decide whether to do an omnibus bill, where they just take every spending bill up to this point, put it in one big package, up and down vote, no amendment, or they can do another continuing resolution that could either go further into December till they make decisions, or could be punted into next year and then have to be started with the new Congress. I won't get into all those complications. So there is a very quick overview, Mr. Chairman. Did I do okay? I didn't even think I breathed. Did I stop to breathe? How I did?
There was no comma or period there. It's you read it right off.
No commas.
You're always that way. Always that way. I mean, you're very cognizant of time, and I really appreciate that. But that's a lot of information. So I'll tell you face to face. I always give you a hard time on virtual. Take your time and go through it for everyone. There's so much information. Any questions?
Any questions? Again, this will all be written up.
So the map,
Yes, ma'am.
the verbal underneath the map. I don't know if that's, you've got the second sentence in there, nearly 40% of the counties in North Carolina. I don't understand what that might be. That looks like
Yes, thank you. Actually, that's a correction that, believe it or not, I actually made that today, didn't make it into this. So we'll make sure it's corrected before it goes out. What we're saying there is that, as you see in the previous sentence, so we know we have 100 counties in the
Right.
state. So that 40% represents that approximately 39 counties
Right.
that are in new districts.
right.
So that really needs to be corrected. It's not the best written sentence. We'll get that fixed. But we're saying nearly 40% of North Carolina counties.
So
Yes.
where can this be found for other folks?
This particular map is online. But
Okay,
the sentences and things of this nature that we've written in and the analysis
Yeah.
for Centralina will
Right.
be distributed.
very good, very good.
After I make that correction, Kelly. So it's easier to
Good,
read.
good.
It's
And
good that could be, sent out because we have a lot of folks that's not here.
Mhm.
And this information needs to be out there.
so I guess the follow-up to that would be, you made the joke, is there anything going on in DC right now? And we said no. Do we take the next week or two individually and reach out to these folks and congratulate them or send them a handwritten note and that's the kind of thing, I think
You're
that's,
absolutely right, Martha.
I mean, you gotta do that.
No, it's an excellent point and an excellent suggestion. And I would say, you probably would have gotten to this later, but I like your idea better, is if you have personal relationships with individuals, in any particular seat that, because again, we will work with our delegation, but we'll work across, committee wise. We will have our members. The good news is we get 2 of each, right? So we'll have our members, all the members on the committee from their own delegation to ask for what we need. So across the board, yes, it's a great time to reach out, congratulate people on their election, and give a plug to Centralina. Yes, ma'am.
And I guess the follow-up to that would be with Jeff Jackson particularly, because, Jeff was a senator from right here. And several of you all or us would have had some kind of connection with him. I did before he ever went to the Senate when he was an ADA. So I think you just got to go back and really, massage those kinds of relationships.
Mhm.
So I guess the ask would be, hate to ask this, but in the follow-up to this packet, if we could have, because where would be the best place to send things right now? In the next, if we were to do it in the next month,
Mhm.
I know if you send it to Dane Con, if you send it to Capitol Hill, hell, it may never get there. I mean, you know, it has to go through this and this and this and this and this. Is there a way that we can have good addresses,
Sure, yeah, we can modify this to provide contact
Like-
information.
home, like a home address or?
Well, I don't know if we could go that far, but
Well,
with the incumbents, of course, their offices won't change. I mean,
Right.
right now they
Right.
won't, at least till January, they'll do some shifts in
Right.
offices. They'll have, you know, in with newly elected members, they'll have to go through the lottery system to find out where they're gonna be located.
And
So
which-
they won't
which
know that.
basement, right?
Which, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, whether they're on the 5th floor of the Cannon Building, everybody's, you know, heard the stories and seen the movies, right? Where they think they're having the elaborate office, all of a sudden they're next to what we used to call the cages. But, you know, it's where you put your office supplies. But in any case, I would suggest putting that out to, probably to their headquarters address for now, until they get some
And if
locations.
somebody can follow through, I think if we could have that, to make those little contacts.
And where we know that, you know, they're gonna be staffing up, if we know that there's some existing staff that might be going into roles, you know, reaching out to them as well.
Okay, thank you.
And our local offices won't change, you know, wherever the office may be, whatever.
Oh, that's true, that's true.
That's not gonna change.
But like,
They don't have their aid.
Oh, definitely,
or-
Jeff.
but Jeff Jackson, you know, brand spanking
I
new.
don't know him, so I definitely need to reach out to him. Because, yeah, that's one of the ones I don't know.
And Leslie, you all remember, we usually do August advocacy when we do our meetings with the delegation. We postponed that this year because of the election, so we'll start to have those meetings that we set up with you and your delegation probably in January. We'll look at the timing. to see.
Exactly. They won't, especially the new members, but even the members that are shifting districts, they will want us to hold off until January. They will not want to start hearing sort of the issues from their new congressional district till they're sworn in, and they'll be in the process now of moving. Some offices will be moving their local, you know, Representative Fox, for example, is likely to be moving her office to a different location. And so they're gonna be doing that, and there's the holiday season and everything else. But yes, Geraldine makes the valid point that we will be working to get those meetings set up as we've done in the past, and then invite the electeds to come along. But in the meantime, I'll make a note to work with them and see that we get you some addresses in the meantime.
Thank you.
And in 2 years, we can do it all over again.
That's exactly right. I know.
I'll be good.
So, you know, by the time we get to know everybody, we'll just have to line up and start again. That's right. We like to keep it interesting. Yeah.
What discussion, I'm looking at your report, your September, October, and what we've all talked about, said right here, what was discussed was what you build, maintain, and relationships. That's exactly what you were talking about. Regional priorities that you addressed, and grant opportunities, which you always address for all of us, for the whole area. So it's all good stuff comes out of this. So that's Leslie Mazingo's September through October report. Any further comments or questions?
Might ask if we've had, I know we've had somebody else join us. We've had Peter Shudo has joined us. I don't know if are we there yet?
You're one short.
I'm sorry. I pulled all I could pull.
One short, still, you don't have a quorum, that's okay. Leslie, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So again, we'll receive that as information also, and Betty Watson information. Okay, make attention, please. We're going from the federal level to the state level. Item 4, Raleigh Relations Update. Kelly Weston sitting to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So really the purpose of this item tonight is to provide you all with an update on where we are with the state advocacy agenda that we first talked to you about in terms of the development process back at the October Board of Delegates meeting. So did just kind of want to segue between Leslie's report and this one with a little background on the evolution of our government affairs program. So we really began with our federal advocacy and our work with Leslie over the past few years. And we've also been doing some statewide advocacy, primarily through our involvement in the State COG Association, NCAR-COG. And then about 2 years ago, we started our Raleigh Relations strategy to focus on advocating for our region really at the state level. And so now we're at the point where we would like to focus on developing a formal strategy for engagement. And really the purpose of that advocacy agenda that we're working on developing is to continuing to advance those Raleigh relations efforts and also leverage the relationships that we've worked to build with state legislatures over the past 2 years. So amongst the COGs in the state, we are currently holding the largest state legislative delegation overall. So you'll see the maps there. These are based on this year's election. And so there are 12 Senate seats and we have 29 House seats. So that means that there are 41 legislators, state legislators for us to engage. And that also means that there are a lot of opportunities there for some bipartisanship around issues that impact the communities in our region. And so to leverage this opportunity, we're proposing a framework for our state advocacy priorities and how we can really advance our Raleigh relations efforts going forward. So we've identified 3 categories that our priorities could fall into. The first you see there is monitoring, and that would involve tracking and reacting to legislation that has an impact on our region. And I would say also under this category, we would be monitoring the advocacy agendas of the league as well as the County Commission Association. Then the second sort of category there is policy shaping. And so our participation, that would really be kind of shaping legislation, informing legislation. And our participation in the COG Association would also fall under that as well. But there may be some opportunities for us to advocate on our own outside of the association. And so a good example of that would be back in 2021, when the board adopted a resolution, if you'll recall, in opposition to the increase in housing opportunities bill that was in the state legislature that would have mandated changes to local government zoning authority. So we haven't taken many actions like that in the past, but if you all are interested in doing that in the future, that's something we could include as part of the advocacy agenda. And then that third category there is funding for Centralina. And so that would be seeking direct appropriations to support Centralina's work for communities and the region. And so an example of that would be the funding request that we made for Connect Beyond implementation earlier this year to the General Assembly. So I'd like to pause there for just a moment to kind of give you a chance to take in that framework and get your feedback. So we can do all of these things, all of these categories, all of these buckets. It would actually be more advocacy work than we've done at the state level in the past. So there would be across these categories some opportunities for internal engagement, for engagement with you all as the board, and then also some external engagement with our other partners. But what we would like to hear from you tonight would be, do you want us to take this approach? Do you want us to do all 3? Or would there be some areas that you would want us to focus on? So, Mr. Chairman, I turn that question to the.
Okay, Kelly has put it out there. All 3 or narrow it down to 1 or 2 of those.
I guess my question, Mr. Chairman, is how much time does Kelly have in order to do 1, 2, or 3 parts of this thing? I assume that Kelly is an organization of 1. And as a result of that, you can only split her so many ways in order to do this. I realize that Leslie has a staff of people that work with her and help her. And yet Kelly is going to be pretty much doing this on her own, unless I've misunderstood something.
That is a very important point, Mayor. I appreciate you raising staff capacity and Kelly's great work so far. I will share now what I was planning to share later, which is that Kelly will be completing her transition out of the clerk to the board role as of this meeting. And I'm very pleased to introduce to the board Narissa Knight, and back right behind you, she will be our new board's administrator. Narissa comes within Centralina. She worked in our workforce development department, and she did a range of things, including staffing their board. So she has that experience and she's really excited to step into this role. And that will create capacity for Kelly to do this work and work with Chris Wall from EQB Strategic, who's been our consultant on this work. So it is a lot. There are a lot of issues. It will be a very busy, long session. So I think there's going to be a need for some strategic partnerships with these organizations like the League and the County Commissioners Association and CARCOG. But there's a lot we can do given the size and power of our delegation.
Yeah, with 41 members. I mean,
And then Geraldine mentioned something who I was gonna ask, Chris Wall.
Yes.
He would be an advocate to in this endeavor. So yes, a staff of one, Mayor, Chris Wall, who's in here helping COGS in Raleigh, as Leslie does in Washington, then hopefully that's someone to give her information or she gives him information, whatever we're working together with. But again, I guess down to two people, okay? One, your question was one to maybe two, and the second one's not full time. You know, he's working in other areas.
Well, I also have a question about, it's hard for us to specify which one of these we think Kelly can work on unless we have some feel for how much time each of these categories would take. Would monitoring take 70% of the time, or is that 20% of the time? Is policy shaping 20% of the time or at 70% of the time? So I guess I don't feel like I know enough yet to know about this and to help you answer your question of whether we do all three or just one of these as we go along. Because I don't know, maybe you say this one is going to take up 80% of my time if you ask me to do that. Well, then if that's the case, maybe we have to then pick which other one would fill in the gap of the other 20%. And so I think we need a little more help in helping you structure which one that you're pursuing on our behalf, or understanding what it is we're trying to try to get accomplished.
Like along that same line, does she know? Just getting into it. So,
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those situations where you got to kind of get it started and then kind of see what it's going to take, and then a decision can be made as to where we go out.
Absolutely. And so we've actually been working on identifying a list of priorities, and we wanted to share that with you all as well for your feedback, to kind of give you a sense of what we're thinking about. But really, I think it would kind of come down to, it would depend on the priority, what amount of time it would take, depending on which bucket it would fall into. But we can share that information about the priorities, which is your proceed, and then we can circle back with that question to see if that gives you a little more information.
I think so. And then looking at the monitor, and looking what's up there, just off the top of my head, funding. Okay, I mean, that's what Centralina does a lot of, especially trying to get the Connect Beyond thing out. I saw on the news today something about transportation, you know, so that's always talk in the Charlotte area, always talking about that. So just funding for this organization to proceed. We do a lot of that. Just get money in here so we can put the services out there, but there's a lot of other things going on too with those other ones. So thanks for bringing that up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think we may have quorum now because Bob Hovis just joined.
Jesus.
That's what we were texting about, trying to get Bob on the phone.
I mean, I know, wherever you just texted me, come
Thank you,
on.
Vice Chair. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hovis. Any further information for Kelly Weston as she proceeds in this?
I think, were you not going to show us that next sheet?
There we go.
So in terms of identifying the priorities that would fit into each category, the first would be that funding category, so the funding for Centralina. So we have been internally looking at a list of priorities and working on developing a list of priorities. And we actually shared that with you all back at the October Board of Delegates meeting on some items that we're exploring, some issue areas. And so you'll see that list there as well on the slide. It is a work in progress, so we're continuing to discuss this internally, but really what we're looking for with these issue areas for funding would be areas that align with our work plan. So we're looking at our work plan, kind of dissecting that and seeing some areas where we could potentially request funding from the state to kind of fund that work for us. And then in terms of the policy shaping and monitoring categories, what we've done was also at the October Board of Delegates meeting, you all provided us with some feedback on potential priorities that we could include in the advocacy agenda. And so we've listed there the issue areas and then some potential ways that we could potentially address those issues. So transportation was one that we heard a lot of at the meeting, and I won't go into all the different aspects of it, but there were a lot of different ways that you all said that there was opportunities to advocate for transportation. A lot of the work through our Connect Beyond implementation would be addressing some of those concerns or issues that you all raised under transportation. So that would be one way we'd be addressing that. Also aging infrastructure, so specifically roads and stormwater. And we have been promoting federal and state grant opportunities, so we would continue doing that as well. But also looking for other opportunities to monitor legislation related to aging infrastructure. Funding for entrepreneurial centers similarly, continuing to promote grant opportunities to address that. Taxing authority for local municipalities, that's something we would be monitoring, as well as Medicare expansion and the tree canopy tree ordinances. Those were other issue areas that you all identified during that meeting. So really what we would be kind of looking at in terms of identifying areas for the policy shaping and monitoring would be that feedback from you all, helping us to surface issues that we could monitor or potentially do some policy shaping. So I'll pause here again to ask another question. What's really important to you all in terms of what you would like to have conversations around related to state policy? Are these the issues that you would like to have conversations around? Are there other issues? Mr. Chairman, I'll just throw that back to the board.
So again, I go back to old history. History would say that we did some of this back when Rebecca helped me. Rebecca, I can't think of her last name. Okay, when Rebecca was with us years ago. And we did some lobbying, if you will, to the General Assembly, okay, collectively. And what I think, personally, I think the one thing that we've got to do is that we've got to only go to them on issues that both city and county can agree on. Because, you know, there are some things that, hold on a minute, strike that, let's go back. Cities and counties need to work together. And in so many situations, they don't even talk to each other. They may look like it on the forefront, you know, we're all singing Kumbaya, but when it gets down to really what's going on, they're not, okay? And we need to do a better job of that. Me personally, as well as this organization. But I think that anything we take to the General Assembly on, it's got to be things that both the association and the league can agree on. So I think that's the most important thing to me, because we can't get in there and start, if we divide, and it's not something that we all can agree on. And then you start looking at what things can we all agree on, okay? You know, the one that I said yay on was a taxing authority, and I don't like, that's not what it said, but I can't read it if that's where it is. Does it say tax authority? Okay. Well, you know, I don't like those two words together, but that's exactly what it is. When they struck any kind of revenue for us years ago, that hurt folks, whether you're a city or you're a county. I'll just shut up. But those were things that were important to me, is things that we can all agree on.
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else? Answer to this question.
So moving on, the process that we would be taking with this would be first to identify an issue, then analyze that issue and what it means to our region and the communities within our region, developing a recommendation for a position, then requesting a specific board action from you all. And then once that action is taken, we would be doing some communication or outreach to the General Assembly. So that's kind of the approach that we would be taking for each specific issue that is surfaced. Again, we'd be working with Chris Wall on surfacing those issues and identifying which ones would be the best for us to pursue based on this list that we've been generating and any feedback that you all provide us with. And so in terms of what's next in this process for developing the agenda, so right now we are continuing to gather that input, as I mentioned, from you all. We're also meeting with the regional managers group next Wednesday. So that's the city, county, and town managers across the region to have a similar conversation with them, to share with them the feedback that we've heard so far, the input that we've collected, both internally and from you all. And then also continuing to vet our list, develop that and vet it with Chris Wall. Identify some opportunities for advocacy and specific activities and actions. We'll continue doing that during November and then December, drafting an actual advocacy agenda based on those strategies. And then in January, we hope to return to you all with the actual agenda for your review and adoption. So that's kind of an overview of the timeline, the process that we're taking with this. Again, I will pause there to see if there are any questions, and kind of going back to that original question about the capacity and the direction for those three buckets or those three categories.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, she's given us more information. So any questions or comments regarding how she can proceed with this?
You put the 3 buckets back up there.
And as she's doing that, I think my dear Anson County buddy over here made a good point. We might not know yet until Kelly gets in there and knowing, Mayor, that this is going to be Kelly's baby and we're not going to be Kelly's baby anymore. We're being thrown out in Kelly's capacity over there. But you better take care of us because Kelly has spoiled us, okay? I mean, this is going to be her new direction. So maybe we don't put a hold on any of it. Maybe give it to her, let her run and see where she can go with it.
That was kind of my thinking, because every slide after this one was all kind of really tied together. You know, it was excellent. So I'm thinking, just start moving with it and see how it works. So, and make adjustments as she goes. Or as we go, provide input.
Good point. I mean, I think it's a Kelly.
Yes.
After you get moving on it and you get more input from Chris Wall, from us or anyone, then you know where to slow down and stuff. Did you just ask us? Again, as the mayor said, we don't know.
Yes.
So on here, this is receiving as information, okay? But now that we have a quorum, do we still want to receive it as information, or is this something that we think moving to the board level that the executive committee needs to take a vote on? I'm just throwing it out there.
We'd like to come back with you.
Okay.
While when we do federal and state in
Okay.
January, so we can kind of present a holistic picture of our activities. And we haven't had the opportunity to reflect on what the league and the county association, they're doing their legislative strategy right now, so I think we need to look at that too.
That's exactly
to your
right.
point.
With the city-state dinner in this, like
I think it's
February.
next week for the counties.
Right, and the city is, yeah.
Next week, the association is doing their legislative goals, guidance principle review. And then the legislative goals and conferences actually in, quote me on this, but I think it's February.
And the cities is too.
Thank you.
For Kelly, before we move on, any other questions or comments for Kelly regarding this agenda item? All good? I think she has direction from this board. Where she's going, and we'll receive more information in the very near future. I'm going to bring your attention to item 6. We're going to cover item 6. And then since we have a quorum, thank you, Mr. Hovis, for attending. I'm going to back up to the audit. But first, we'll go to item 6 for the 2023 board meeting schedule and our executive director.
Nominating committee.
Whoops, I skipped one. Why I'm all mixed up tonight. See, Leslie Mazingo shows up and it just blows my mind. Item 5, excuse me, everyone, nominating committee forecasts. I'll keep with Kelly Weston.
Just quickly, it's that time of year again where we are getting ready or looking ahead to officer elections for the new year. And so each year around this time, we form a 3-person nominating committee, which is charged with selecting the slate of officer nominees for the upcoming year. Last year, the committee consisted of Councilmember Larkin Eggleston from City of Charlotte, Commissioner Lynn Shue from Cabarrus County, and Councilmember Corinthia Lewis Lemon from the town of Mormon. And so this committee will meet once or twice between now and the January meeting of the executive board via conference call or over Zoom. And really, the purpose of that will be to discuss the slate of officer nominees for chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. And so as staff, we will support the committee throughout the whole process. We will coordinate the call, we'll do any outreach that the committee directs us to do on their behalf. The time commitment is minimal, but the responsibility is a big one. And so if you are interested in serving as an officer for the coming year, we recommend that you not serve on the nominating committee. But once the committee is formed, there would be an opportunity to reach out to them to let your interest in serving as an officer, So if you're ready to commit tonight to serving on the nominating committee, please let me know. I'll also be following up after this meeting to get volunteers.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. So we receive as information and it must be formed a select set of officers prior to the January 11th, 2023 executive board meeting. So if Kelly doesn't hear anything from anyone tonight while we're here, you can contact her after the meeting or she may contact you. Now, bring your attention please to item 6, the 2023 board meeting schedule. Our executive director will address that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You have the next slide, Kelly. We wanted to bring before the board this evening a discussion around our calendar for 2023. In particular, to discuss the pros and cons of the different formats that we have for our board meeting. We've enjoyed and we've always offered as Centralina an option for people to call in. Pre-pandemic, that was a conference call line. During pandemic, we all got comfortable on Zoom. And there's been a lot of really great benefits of the hybrid meeting approach. We've had great attendance since we offered Zoom. We've been able to meet quorum, which tonight is a great example of. It's a wonderful way to make sure that if our board members are constrained by distance, that's not a barrier to participation. And we've been able to invite some remote speakers in. But there are some cons. We have, I think all of us are a little zoomed out, so attendance doesn't always mean engagement. I think myself included have gotten very good at multitasking during Zoom calls. And this board, its function is really to build regional relationships. So the FaceTime that you all have with each other to come together, to learn each other's names and issues and priorities for your community is really important. And then on another downside is sometimes it's wasteful of our resources and staff time to prepare for a lot of people coming in person, and then we get last minute cancellations. So our approach and our recommendation to the board, next slide, is to blend these pros and cons. So we would like to recommend for the executive board's consideration that our board of delegates, which meet 4 times a year, that we do these meetings in person and that we focus those board of delegate meetings on relationship building. We think of them almost as mini conferences where we're doing more programming. We are creating opportunities for you all to connect. We're substantively discussing issues, and we potentially can move the meeting around the region so that we're hosting it in different locations, not always at this office. Quorum is important for those meetings, certain meetings, but not always the goal. The executive board, however, we would like to continue to offer a hybrid option for the executive board, since this body really makes important decisions for us. And we need to make sure we have quorum, and we need to make sure that people can participate via Zoom if that's most suitable to them. And we could also have the option of in virtual only meetings if we have a light agenda. The executive board meets multiple times per year. One more slide. Okay, this is the proposed schedule. Kind of blending these two things together. We still meet at the same time. And that is the alternation of executive board and board of delegate meetings, along with a little bit of a format and forecast for you all to consider. So open to your comments and feedback on this item. If you'd like to endorse our recommendation, lovely. If you would like to change it and go all, Zoom hybrid options for all meetings, we serve at your pleasure, and we're happy to do whatever is in the best interest of the board.
Thank you, Geraldine. I know we'll have comments regarding this. Martha Sue Hall.
Again, just old time here, okay? Years ago, we moved the board meetings, okay, not the executive meeting, but the board of delegates moved from site to site to site, okay? 9 counties, is that how many we still have? Okay, let's just play devil here. 9 counties we have. And if you look at, and the pros are, you get to host something and you get to spotlight and to really talk about, for instance, Kannapolis. Here's what I think about, if you go to Cabarrus County and go to the Blaine baseball field down, to go and to see their new town. And I could see stuff. Or in Albemarle, we would host it and have it down at the new Pfeiffer campus. Okay, I'm all about that. But then it makes not so much for you, Jarvis, coming to Albemarle, but then we go back over to Lincoln County and that person driving an hour and 40 minutes to get to Albemarle. Or if Jarvis wanted to do it in Anson County,
I've done it.
I know you have. You talk about
Talking about
spending an all day to go from to Lincoln. So those are the positives and negatives. I loved it because it got people out and it got to showcase things that were going on. Not just for the Board of Delegates meeting. So I think there are pros and cons, and I'm just throwing that out there as having done it. And if we think getting a quorum is tough in a central location here in Charlotte, in person, I'm telling you, it's sometimes even tougher getting somebody to drive that far. First thing, I love the idea of having in-person executive, no, strike that. In-person Board of Delegates and hybrid executive. I love that. I think we need to continue that for whatever reason. I think your suggestion there is great. Then you get out to the schedule. I ask for our federal legislature here, Leslie, to give me the dates for NLC and for NACO. Because in the past, we have had dates that kept folks from coming to that March meeting because their excuse was they were gone to DC. That ain't gonna be a problem this year because she has given me the dates, and NACO is in February this year, which has never been, and NLC is in the latter part of March. So that March date is fine. So with all that said, those are just comments, but I love it. I love the idea of how you're gonna do hybrid for one and in person. I don't know about the moving of it. I love it, but I don't know how good the attendance will be.
Okay, thank you, Martha Sue Hall. Any other comments, questions? Are those present or those virtual?
I have a comment.
Um,
I was just saying, I agree that I like the in-person, now that we're past this pandemic, that because learning people and building relationships is so important, and it's just almost impossible to do over Zoom.
Mhm.
But then with the others, if somebody's like out of town or something, they still have that opportunity to call in for the more voting heavy agendas. So I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I bet you.
Please acknowledge it, please.
It looks like it. No, Jay's eyes are moving.
If someone broke up, it's just trying to speak. You gonna try it again? Anyone?
Was it, can you hear me?
Yes.
We got it. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, guys. I like the schedule and everything like that. And sad part is I actually planned on attending in person tonight, but because of the fact that I wear a lot of different hats in the town that I'm in sometimes, I got caught, doing things at the last minute, making sure that, I love coming to the meetings. I love talking to you guys and everything like that. But the most important thing at the moment that I was dealing with was my customers, the residents of the town. And sometimes it's hard for me to try to pull away to get to you guys, because it's an hour and 32-minute drive for me. So because I am on the executive board and on the delegates board as well, the board of delegates, I like the hybrid because in the event that I cannot show up in person, I can jump on and do what I need to do and listen and participate. And then with the fact that I know you guys, some of you are parents as well, after I leave my place of employment and I don't really turn off, I have to go home and I'm still a mom of 5. So I have to do mom work and all that other stuff. So, and I mean, I'm not, saying that I can't get to these things all the time, but there's going to be sometimes that I might not be able to be in person for the board of delegates, because like on Wednesdays, when you're having these meetings, I am physically the only person working in the town that day. So that's just a comment.
Thank you. And well taken. So thank you. Anyone else? I've got just a few things. I mean,
So what are we doing with that? What are we gonna do with it?
right now we're just discussing.
Okay.
Yeah. I wrote down some things while Jody was talking and some of you others were talking. And one is participation, obviously. You get nominated by your board or whomever to be part of us. Another one's building relationships. It's already been stated, and also engagement. And the board of delegates we had last time, I stood out here at the door, holding the door open for folks as they came in. And of course, most I did not know because we've been doing it virtual for so long. I had to look at name tags. And I said, oh yeah, I know your name. And then they look at me and say, oh yeah, I recognize your voice. So that kind of thing. I mean, and that's great. However, you folks is here. I know everybody can't come, as just stated. And I've missed a couple where Jay McCosh has to sit in. But to sit here and look at face when somebody's talking, that just means more. And I know it's a commitment. I know that. And it was just stated that all of us wear many hats. I know some can't come because it's Wednesday and they may go to church or something. And I understand that too. But the participation, relationship, and engagement, very important for each other, because we learn from each other as far as the organization goes. We learn more about Centralina each time we come to these things because of what's going on, what we've heard tonight for the agenda. And so it's just huge. And I think tonight's a good example where we went through, I wrote it down, we went through half the agenda before we finally got a quorum. So we finally got one. I'm grateful for that. I thank everyone for logging in or showing up. But it's just hard to run a meeting and conduct business if we don't have enough. So the virtual Zoom, whatever you want to call it, is great because we do get a quorum, just as we did tonight. It's a good example of that. But if you can make it, please come, because in person and comments we want you around this table to discuss. That's even greater because you do have a participation. You got a relationship. You're making relationships and you're engaging with the organization that's over 9 counties or represented by 9 counties, and that's just a big deal. So we do have a quorum, and it is going to require a motion to adopt the board schedule that the executive director brought before us. Any more comments or questions, concerns before I ask for a motion?
One thing as far as moving it around is concerned would be, like, that's a decision the board of delegates to make in the executive committee. Be my thinking.
What was that?
As far as moving the board of delegates meeting around, I think that would be a decision for them more so than the executive committee, because they would be the ones that would.
Actually, I think for the bylaws, it's my call, right? Position. For the board of delegates, so positions, the executive directors.
Oh, okay, well.
Just procedurally, but I think to your point, maybe in our February meeting, we can discuss that. It could be very logistically challenging to do that, so we might not want to commit 100% to that particular part of it, just to see how things go.
Well, I'll change my comment then to get input from the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood.
Yeah, I mean, I just said, if you want to move it somewhere, I'll commit to hosting it sometime. On my birthday next year would be great on August the 8th. Y'all can come to Albemarle and we'll go down to Pfeiffer's campus, news campus, and we will meet at Pfeiffer's new campus. I mean, if you decide to do it, do what, that's right. No, but what I'm saying is, I love the idea because I just remember being able to go places that I would not necessarily go. But you're keeping them people from
I can remember going to Tyvola Road.
God.
To the senior center thing there on Tyvola Road, and then in Matthews.
Matthews at the community
Center there.
building.
We went to the senior centers because Martha Sue Hall was always one of the groups. We had to go there because her being a senior. But you know, we tried moving around, and I think it was well received. I felt sorry for staff. They had to load up
I love
a
everyone.
lot of stuff, computers and cables and all kinds of stuff, and then pull and unload and set up and load back up. This is who I felt sorry for, is the staff right here, not necessarily those who had maybe drive a little bit further. So any further discussion? We have a quorum. Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the 2023 board meeting format and location.
So moved.
Jennifer Step made a motion. Have a second. Thank you. You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed, like sign? Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that concludes what's on the agenda, but since we have a quorum, I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up to agenda item number 2. We need to have a formal motion to approve the audit. This thing.
Back and move the minutes to begin with.
Yes, we do.
Move approval of minutes as presented.
Make the motion to approve the minutes. Second. All in favor? Motion passes. Item 2 on the audit. This was critical because there was a time sensitivity. We needed to finalize this with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and our finance director is still here regarding that. So I want to make a motion to approve the Centralina Regional Council financial statements, compliance report, and audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th of 22.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Woodbull, do you have a second?
Second.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Okay, we'll make a motion for federal relations update. Most of you heard that. Motion to accept the Strategic Consulting Performance Report for September through October of 2022, plus all the other information she provided us. Can I have a motion? Mayor Hennett, second. Jennifer Steph, all in favor? Opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Now we're at the end of our agenda. We are a little bit behind because Martha Sue's here, but we'll catch up real quick. Any comments from the executive board or Centralina staff? Anyone virtual that's called in or logged in? Anyone here in the room?
Local question, okay, and this is to my colleagues both here and there. Some elections, some municipal elections were yesterday. Very few, but there were some. Some county elections were yesterday. And Kelly, this is probably an unfair question. I probably should have sent this to you ahead of time. Based on yesterday, are we losing anyone that you know of? No. So Geraldine's already checked. Very good. So by virtue of not losing anyone, my question is, will most of you do a reorganization in December? And might there be a different representative, COG representative? I'm just throwing that out there because there will be reorganizations within our geographic council, 9 counties. I'm just throwing that out there because some people may change. There's a possibility of it changing. Not necessarily will it, but just people need to be mindful of that.
I think we start the outreach for appointments next month. Later this month.
Right, because of December, okay.
And for ours, because we do it the off years, so. There was a new county commissioner for Gaston. I don't know if they'll change anything or not.
Yeah. So that will occur in about 2 weeks, right, Kelly? God.
Okay, those who are calling with us, keep that in mind that that, okay. Who called? Jay McCosh, go ahead.
No, I think that was.
I've been,
Bob
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Bob Hovis.
I think it was me that chimed in. Yeah, I know I'm leaving. I wanted to get down there tonight, but like the other one said, I was heading that way and something came up. I wanted to meet you guys in person because I think it's good to network. But unfortunately, this is probably my last meeting because we're changing and I'm going to the health department instead of this committee for next year. So it's been nice chatting with y'all online.
No.
Thank you, Commissioner Shudo.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attendance. Thank you so much. Okay, those who were with us, and we'd like to keep you because you're familiar with our organization. You're familiar with the way things work. You know, if you have been here in person, you've listened, you've logged in anyway, and receive information by email from Kelly. So you're very knowledgeable on this, and we'd love to keep you if you choose to go that route. So if you don't, please inform those who may take your place. The information you have, please pass it on so they can maybe know how this organization works or functions. They could call any of us on the board. They can call anyone in this organization here at Centralina to ask questions and be sent the information that you may need. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we'll move on now to comments from the executive director, Joni Norton.
I introduced Narissa, so we're really excited to have her join, but please join me in giving Kelly a big round of applause. We're so grateful for her service to Centralina and to this board in particular, and very excited to let her sink her teeth into new challenges here in the organization. And real quick, congratulations to Commissioner Lynn Shu, who won re-election last night for Cabarrus County. Commissioner Jean Haupt from Iredell also won re-election, and Commissioner Lane Powell of Mecklenburg County. So our three representatives, to your point, did get re-elected, but we will have some new faces on our Board of County Commissions for elections, from the election. So I'll be doing the rounds. I'll be in Gaston County tomorrow evening giving a presentation, and we'll be connecting with some of you to come to your commissions as well. So that's all I got.
Thank you, our executive director. Any questions for Geraldine before I move on? The last thing will be comments from myself, and I'll hurry through this. The Connect Beyond Advancing Plan Committee at the August Board of Delegates meeting, we established a subcommittee of the Centralina Board to provide regional leadership on the implementation of the Connect Beyond Regional Mobility Plan. As you all know, this plan outlines an important vision of how we can improve mobility choices and connections. In order for this vision to become a reality, we need to work together across county and city boundaries. Our dedicated Centralina staff is hard at work on implementation, but there are some issues that will require leadership and decision-making by elected officials. This committee will be the platform for these discussions. It will bring recommendations back to the Centralina Executive Board and the Metropolitan Transit Commission Board for action as needed. Staff has been working diligently to form the committee and select representatives from towns, cities, and counties from across the region. We are working with city and county managers to identify elected officials who can represent their communities, transit agencies, and transportation plan organizations. I'm pleased to share tonight that Mayor Darrell Hennett of Kannapolis and Mayor Vi Lyles of Charlotte will serve as co-chairs of the committee. The full list of committee members will be shared in the coming weeks. The kickoff meeting is scheduled for early 2023. If any executive board member would like to learn more about the committee or participate, please reach out to Geraldine. Next is the Charlotte Aviation Academy. I have flyers here for that. Applications for the 2023 Charlotte Aviation Academy are due Monday, November the 14th. There's still time to apply. Commissioner Woodburn and myself have taken this, and it's probably one of the most wonderful classes that you'll take as far as learning how it helps our region and helps your city or town or county. The county will offer an interesting mix of presentations from subject matter experts and behind the scenes look at operations, including the new FAA tower, which is the second highest one in the world, planning, safety, and security, and the complex systems at CLT. Classes are held January through March. And again, it's well worth going. Please contact Emily Parker here at Centralina or Kelly or Narissa with any questions or more details, and I have the information here. This is our last board meeting of 2022. I want to extend my thanks to everyone, all of you serving on executive board and the board of delegates this past year. I miss seeing a lot of you because we were virtual most of the time. But I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. And I personally want to thank Kelly Weston. She prepares me for this. We talk on the phone, we email with our executive director and whatever staff, and helps me tremendously with this. And I'm grateful to that. But I welcome Narissa. I think Kelly's already warned her how I like things done for at least one more meeting. And with my notes and all the preparations. So Narissa, welcome. We welcome you. Thanks for sitting in tonight with us. And it's been a pleasure meeting you, and we look forward to you sitting right here very soon. Kelly, good luck in your new position, whatever it is here. She's not leaving the office. She's not leaving the building. She's right here. We'll still get to see her, but she'll be doing something else. So Narissa, I look forward to working with you, and I thank you so much. We've reached the end of our agenda with no further business. Please keep the veterans in your mind this week. Do what you can for them. God bless you. No further business. Meeting's adjourned.
Safe travels.
Yeah, that's why I was.